Right. These notes are going to show you and remind you what to do when you're factoring when that a value, that leading coefficient, is not a 1, anything but a 1. Right? So there's a method called the slip slide method that helps you get the factors really easily and really quickly than just regular guessing and checking and that sort of old-fashioned business that is tedious and time-consuming. Okay, so I have a few examples that will talk through and guide you through and remind you what to do, so you can watch it and go over it and review it before taking quizzes and tests. So the first example is 2x squared minus 3x minus 2. Okay, so when our a value is not a 1, we have to take the leading coefficient and we have to multiply it times the constant, so a times c, and rewrite it so you end up with x squared minus 3x minus 6. Gives you a new trinomial. Oh, sorry, not 6, 4. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. Once you get to this new trinomial, your a value is 1. So you're going to go through and factor it based on the way we did before. So x and x, a minus sign in the back tells you that both signs are different, so we need a plus and a minus. We've got to multiply to get 4 and subtract to get 3. So 1 and 4, 2 and 2. The only combination that does that is 1 and 4. Okay, and because there's a minus sign in the front, that means the big number goes with the minus sign. So 4 with the minus and 1 with the plus. So if you check it real quickly, positive 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So you're good to go from here. All right, so that's the slip part. Now the most important part is to bring back that leading coefficient. You have to slide it back in. You are not finished right now. So you have to divide each constant of your binomials by that leading coefficient. So our leading coefficient was a 2. We have to divide each piece by 2. Right? And now we're ready to write our final factors. If you have a fraction that does not divide or reduce, then that means the denominator will slide up in front of the x. Right? So that's the slide portion. So this factor is 2x plus 1. Okay, you're not going to have any fractions anywhere in your binomials. Okay, now over here on the second one, 4 does divide by 2, so the second factor is x minus 2. Okay, and if you were to FOIL it, you would get right back to where we started with. You can simply check the first terms, 2x times x, and see if you get the 2x squared you started with. Okay, and then you can check the positive 1 times the negative 2 and see if you get the negative 2. The middle will work itself out, but if you check those first and last pieces, you'll guarantee yourself knowing that your finished answer is going to be okay. All right, so let's look at another one, and the steps are the same for the entire type. There's nothing that changes. Right? So negative 3y squared minus 4y plus 7. Okay, so when we go through with this, we want to take and multiply that leading coefficient of negative 3 to the back. Okay, so that's y squared minus 4y minus 21. Okay, then we want to break it into our two factors. We're going to do y and y. Minus sign in the back means plus and minus. Minus sign in the front tells us big number with the minus sign. So for 21, we've got to multiply to make 21 and subtract to make 4. Well, there's 1 and 21 and 3 and 7. So the one that subtracts to make 4 is the 3 and the 7. 7 is the boss, so 7 goes with the minus sign and 3 with the plus. And if you do your quick check, positive 3 minus 7 is negative 4. So we've got the right numbers with the right signs. All right, now this part we need to come back and divide by that leading coefficient. The leading coefficient was negative 3, so we want to divide each constant by negative 3. Okay, so when we go to do this, the first one does reduce. Positive 3 divided by negative 3 is going to change it to y minus 1. Okay, now for the second part, 7 does not divide by 3, so we don't need to worry about changing our signs. We just need to take the denominator and slide it up in front of the y. So you have negative 3y minus 7. And if you do your quick check to see if your first and last pieces are going to make the same thing, y times negative 3y is negative 3y squared, so that works. And then negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7, so that works. So you know you'll have the right information. Okay, let's take a look at a third one. Okay, so you have 14y squared minus 15y plus 56. Okay, so again, we multiply the leading coefficient times the back, so we end up with y squared minus 15y plus, oh, sorry, the original problem had a 4 there, not a 56. Now, 14 times 4 gives me my 56. There we go. All right, so now you've got y squared minus 15y plus 56. So when you go ahead and break it into your binomials, plus sign in the back tells you both are the same sign, minus sign in the front tells you they're both minuses. Now we've got to multiply to make 56 and add to make 15. All right, so we have 1 and 56 We have 2 and 28, and we have 7 and 8. Okay, so if you add 7 plus 8, you do get 15, so 7 and 8 are the numbers. Okay, and if you do your quick check, -7 minus 8 is -15, so we know we're good there. Okay, then we want to go back and divide by our leading coefficient, which was a 14. Now you'll notice that we've got fractions here that can reduce. You have to reduce your fractions before you slide up anything in front of the letters. Okay, so 7 over 14 makes 1/2. So now I can slide the 2 up in front of the y. So this creates 2y minus 1. Okay, and then over here, 8 and 14 can divide by 2, so that gives you 4 and 7. So the 7 will slide up in front of the y and give you 7y minus 4. Okay, and then do your quick check at the end as well. Take your first 2y times 7y. That gives us 14y squared, so we know we're good there. -1 times -4 does give us +4, so we know we're good there. Okay, if you did not reduce your fractions, you would never get back to where you started. So that's a big clue that something didn't go right or you got more to do. All right, for number 4, if I have 6p squared minus 4p minus 5, leading coefficient to the back, so that makes p squared minus 4p minus 30. Okay, we set up our binomials, p and p, different signs, plus and minus. We got to multiply to make 30 and subtract to make 4. So there's 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. And if you look at those, none of those subtract to make 4. So at this point, we have to stop and cannot go further, and you can either say that it's prime, or you can say not factorable, whichever wording you want to use. Okay, but if you can't go any further than that trinomial that you started with, then you have nothing to do. All right, so that's how you factor when a is not 1. Now let's go back to the piece, because you always have to know how to do this, where we take and incorporate them into equations, and you have to solve by factoring. So this is where not only do you have to factor it, but then you have to turn it around and do baby equations from your factors. Okay, so I'll show you 2 of these, and then you should have enough to go off of to help you out. So if we have 3x squared plus 34x plus 11 equals 0, it is already in standard form, so we don't have to worry about that. There is no GCF, so we don't have to worry about that. A is not 1, so we do have to take the leading coefficient and send it to the back. We have to slip it to the back. So now we've got x squared plus 34x, 3 times 11 is positive 33, equals 0. Okay, keep that equals 0 tagging along the whole way through until it's gone. You're going to break these up into your 2 binomials, x and x. Plus sign means same sign. They're both pluses. So we want to add to make 33 or multiply to make 33, add to make 34. Well, 33 has 1 and 33 and 3 and 11. There's nothing else. Okay, so the only one that adds to make 34 is the 1 and the 33. Okay, remember to bring back that leading coefficient, okay, before you can slide anything. So this 3 needs to divide under each constant, and then we have to write our terms. 1 over 3 does not reduce, so the 3 slips up or slides up in front of the x, so you end up with 3x plus 1 as one of your factors. And then 33 divided by 3 is 11, so x plus 11 is your other one. Okay, and then if you do a quick check before you go any further, just to make sure you're in the right ballpark, okay, 3x times x is going to make 3x squared. 1 times 11 is going to make 11. So we know we've got the right numbers and the right signs happening here. All right, so now we want to take and do our baby equations. One of these is a 2-step and one of them is a 1-step. Remember, for your 2-step equations, I require work. For your 1-step equations, I'm okay with you doing those in your head. All right, so for this 1-step equation, you're going to get -11. That's a guarantee. Okay, over here for the 2-step, you have to subtract 1. So now you've got 3x equals -1, divide by 3, and the x value is -1/3. So when you go to write your final answers, remember they have to be in braces, and the order of them does not matter, but you need -1/3 and -11 sitting in those braces. Okay, so yes, it takes more work to do to solve them by factoring, but you have to use your previous knowledge of factoring and solving to get you the answer. Okay, it doesn't just happen on its own. All right, the last one that we'll do together, 4n squared minus 6n minus 28 equals 0. Again, it's already in standard form, so we don't have to worry about that. If you look closely, yes, the a is not 1, but there is a GCF in here. anytime you have one, you have to take that GCF out first. So you need to get in the habit of asking yourself, before you do anything, is there a GCF? If you can say yes to that question, you've got to take that GCF out. So for 4, 6, and 28, the GCF is 2. So we factor out the 2, and now we're going to have a trinomial left. If you divide everything by 2, you have 2n squared minus 3n minus 14 equals 0. Okay? And at this point, okay, we're ready to factor the trinomial. So this 2 on the outside, we'll just keep tagging along for a little bit, and then we'll get rid of it at the end. Okay, so we want to take... So again, because the leading coefficient is not a 1, we need to take it and multiply it to the back. So leave the 2 on the outside, and we have n squared minus 3n minus 28 as our new trinomial. Okay, we're going to factor that new trinomial into the two binomials. Okay, we have n and n. Plus sign in the back tells us that both signs are different, so we have a plus and a minus. We've got to multiply to get 28 and subtract to get 3. So you should pick out that 7 and 4 are your numbers. And because there's a minus sign in the front, 7's the boss, 7 goes with the minus sign, and 4 with the plus sign. So now at this point, remember, you still have to bring back that leading coefficient, which was a 2. So we have to divide each constant by a 2, and then simplify our factors before we can go further. Right? So the 4 over 2 does divide, and that makes n plus 2. Remember to keep that GCF hanging on the outside. And then 7 over 2 does not reduce, so the 2 will slide up in front of the n and make 2n minus 7. And then tack on that equals 0. Okay, and before we go any further, okay, double check your first and your last, especially for that trinomial at the top. Okay, don't worry about the 2 on the outside. N times 2n does make 2n squared, and positive 2 times negative 7 makes negative 14. So we know we did the factoring part right. Okay, what we need to do at this point is do the solving piece. Because there's a 2 on the outside, to make it go away, we divide by 2 on both sides, and it divides away. So now you've got n plus 2 times 2n minus 7 equals 0. And we're back to where we can do our baby equations. The first one will be a one-step, so n plus 2 equals 0. That will make negative 2. You can do that one in your head. For the second one, you have to do the two-step equation of 2n minus 7 equals 0. So add your 7 over. You get 2n equals 7. Divide by 2. And the fraction is 7/2. Do not ever give a decimal for your solutions. They stay fractions. So when you get done, you got to put them in braces. Negative 2 and positive 7/2 are the solutions. Okay, so those are two examples that incorporate everything we've done in the past few classes related to factoring. So you need to constantly stay on top of it and make sure you remember what to do with each type.